Hi everyone, Zach here, and welcome to Lesson 34 in this series on developing a survival game. In this video, we will set up our landscape material, we'll set up our test environment so we can play around with our landscape material a bit and the various layers we're going to have, and we'll set up our rock layer, which will have a tiling system that changes how the material is tiled based on where the camera is located. This is the first video in our landscape material section. That said, this video has been brought to you by my Patreon sponsors. And that said, fire up your project and let's get started. Hi everyone, and welcome to the first video of subsection B of section 4 in this tutorial series on making a survival game. In this video, we're going to set up our landscape materials. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new level. We'll use the default map, and we're going to delete everything, including the player start, and the skylight for now. We'll leave the atmospheric fog, the light source, and sky sphere. We're going to create a landscape, and it doesn't really need to look like anything. So just go ahead, leave it at the default, and hit create. All right, the next thing I'm going to do, by the way, if you're on a newer version of the engine, it's in modes up here, and you hit the drop down. Once you're in modes, you can create landscape, and then in your modes, switch over to landscape again, and go to sculpt. And we're just going to create a little bit of a mountain hill thingy. All right, so I created a little bit out there that I didn't mean to create. And we're just going to use this to test some stuff out. So I'm not even really paying attention to what it really looks like. I just want some variation on the landscape surface. There we go. That isn't too bad. And just make it a bit wider though. The reason why I want it a bit wider is so I can put a ramp into this thing. I think I'll put the ramp right over here actually. So in my sculpt mode, I'm going to switch to ramp. I'm going to click once on the map and then a second time, and it creates these two little mountain widgets. All right, I'm going to select the first widget, and I'm going to lower it and bring it back a bit, and then lower it again. Select the second one, and I'm going to bring it into the mountain. And I'm just going to hit add ramp. And it creates this nice little ramp we have up there. Going to go back to sculpt, go to smooth, and I'm just going to smooth out that area a little bit. That was a little too much. I'm going to lower the radius or the brush size and just smooth out that bit there. So we have a little bit of a ramp going up. I hope I remember that's where the ramp is. In fact, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to do sculpt and hold the shift key down, and I'm just going to lower this a tiny bit so that we get a nice little depression for our, a little too steep probably. Again, we'll smooth it out. There we go. Still probably a bit too wide, but it works for what we want to do for the test. And with the sculpt tool selected still, I'm going to hold down the shift key again, and I'm going to make a divot in the ground. In fact, I'm going to go back to my normal brush size. And, oop, that was not with the shift on. And just create a little bit of some variation here as well. All right, I'm going to just save this map real quick. We'll do this in map. And this will be our materials test map. All right, with that done, I'm going to go back to place mode. Again, your settings, if you're in a newer version of the engine, 4.25 or newer, will be up here for that. With that done, I'm going to go into my materials, and I am going to create a new folder called ground. I'm going to then go to my textures, and in my textures, I'm going to create a new folder called ground. And now I'm going to take my materials or my assets, go to my world textures, and in here all I'm going to do is go to ground, and I'm going to select all the folders here, and I'm going to import them in, and I'm going to let that go. I'll be back when it's done. Oh, actually before I pause, on the anything that's NM, leave it as normal. All right, I'm going to pause while it does this. When it's done, you'll get a layout like this. That's fine. Just go back to ground, and you can see it's in this folder. I'm not going to use grass 2, so if you want to use it instead, go for it, but I am just going to delete grass 2. I'm gonna just, delete all on that. And then I'm gonna go back to ground, and this is for optimization. I'm going to set my filter to texture, and I'm going to select everything. And then I'm gonna go back and remove anything with a D, which stands for diffuse. Clearly I didn't keep the same lettering conventions when I named these files. So we should have dirt, grass, mud, rock, and sand unselected. I'm also going to unselect my normals as well while I'm thinking about this. So again, dirt, grass, mud, rock, and sand unselected. And I'm going to right click what I currently have, and I'm going to go to my asset actions, and I want to do bulk edit via property matrix. And it's my compression settings I want to change. So I'm going to select my compression settings on all of these if it will let me. I'm just going to try with a couple and do masks. I guess I can't. I swear there used to be a way to do this. So I think it's under texture. I'm just going to pop these open until I find the right thing. It's compression. It's under compression. And we're going to change those to masks. No RGB. It's going to just lock up for a moment, let it do its thing. And there it's done. So why have we done this? Well, this helps with the size of the files. In addition, you'll notice that all the icons, by the way, hit Control S save, are all the icons. All the textures that I have included are perfect squares. This means we don't have to do anything for our MIP mapping to start working. We will address optimization, MIP maps, getting rid of some of the extra plugins in a few videos. I believe that's in part C of section 4. I can't remember quite where I placed that in my schedule. All right, while this is working, I'm going to pause the video. And with it done, I'm going to close this out. And I'm just going to Control S save everything again. Hit save all just to be on the safe side. And I'm going to remove my filters. I can actually remove it that way. All right, so we now have all our textures imported. And they all are basically pre-optimized for what we need. And so let's take a look at our rock one. Again, it's a perfect square, 22K, so it's 2048 by 2048. We already have from texture group, we can already see that it has a number of MIPs up there, that's what I'm looking for. So it already is doing the MIP mapping. Another thing we want to double check, and we might want to go back to the bulk editor. Nope, it did already. It was to turn off the sRGB for our non-diffuse textures. And again, you can see it already has some MIP maps there, which is what we're looking for. If we go to our ground folder in our materials, what we're going to do in here is we're going to create a bunch of subfolders, but we'll do that as we go through. We're going to start by creating a new material. So right click, go to materials, and this is going to be m_landscape. And let's pop this open. And our landscape, let's select our node here. And we are going to go from surface to masked, from opaque to masked. We are going to leave deferred lit. We are going to use material attribute. We will scroll down. Again, we're going to use static lighting. And we are going to scroll further down. This time we will set up our tessellation in advance because we already have the main function set up. We will use PN triangles. We will use crack-free displacement, though we will get some cracks. And we will get rid of our adaptive tessellation. And we will use a tessellation multiplier of 20,000. Let me just double check that is 20,000. I'm not going crazy. Yeah, that's 20,000. Don't worry, we're not actually going to use that full multiplier. Everything else remains the same for now. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to pull off of our landscape node here, this material attribute, and we're going to do layer blend. And we want the landscape layer blend. And we're going to put all our landscapes into this layer blend. The way we do that is we're going to create a bunch of blend layers. And we're going to start with just one here, and we're going to name this blank. This is going to be our empty layer. We don't use it. So we'll ignore it from now. And then we're going to create one for rock, dirt, grass. We technically will have another grass one, but we'll talk about that later on. Mud, sand. So let's pop this open. And this is our rock layer, which will be a height blend. So we get two nodes. We have layer rock and height rock. We then will have a dirt layer. And this again will be a height blend. They'll all be height blends, by the way. Under dirt, we will have our grass layer. And again, this is a height blend. Then after that, we have our mud layer. And the other grass layer is actually the same as the first. We're just going to talk about different options you have. We're not actually going to use the second option for grass at all. And when I say second option, I mean here, not the material. And finally, we have sand, which is also a height blend. All right, I'm going to do some pre-work stuff here that is going to be used for our overall tiling. So first, I'm going to get my world position. And then I'm going to duplicate that node down here because I need two versions of it. One for our general world position and one for our tessellation. So for our tessellation one, just like with the water, we're going to use exclude material shader offsets. All right, I am going to multiply both of these with a tiling amount. So there we go. We have our two multiplies. Let's create a single scalar parameter called world tiling. And I'm going to put this into a category called world. And the category is going to be useful when we have to make edits. I mean, you could categorize everything in the water to make the instance easier to work with, but We're going to put the default value at 1. And we're going to plug this into both of our multiplies. All right. I know I'm going to need a lot more space on that. So with that done, we're going to do our first layer. And the way we're going to do our layer, yeah, there's an error because we have nothing plugged in. That's fine. Is we're going to go up to our folder again. We're going to create a new folder in here called rock. We're going to start with our rock layer. That's kind of why rock is on the top there, even though everything else is in alphabetical. Yeah, everything else is alphabetical. Rock is going to be the sort of base layer for everything. We're going to paint on top of the rock. So inside of our rock folder here, we're going to do right click, material function. So it's going to be MF, and it's going to be rock layer. I am so trying to avoid making jokes about that. All right, and I'm just really curious about something, so I'm going to name this first one height, and I'm going to move this down here. I'm going to create a second output called layer, and I'm going to hit apply real quick. I know that's not going to work properly, and then I'm going to do the inputs in reverse. So I'm going to just do an input for later on right away. And so I'm going to do a function input. It is a vector 2. And this is our dirt, or sorry, not our dirt, our rock UV text chord. And we're going to call this NON, non, for non-inclusive of the other layers, or of the material shader offsets. And then I'm going to do another material function. This one we're going to work with right away. And so this is input, and this is also a vector 2. And this is a rock UV text chord. And I'm just going to quickly apply and save this. And I'm going to go back to my landscape material. I'm going to do my function call. And yes, they're in the right order, except for I spelled rock really badly down there. What the heck was I on when I did that? Rock UV text. Or actually, it should be text chord, not text. There's no second T there. I mean, yes, texture does have a second T, but all right. Apply, save, go back here. All right, the reason why we did that, just to test, was to make sure they show up in the right order so we don't have to cross pins. It's going to go in like that. It's going to go in like that. And then our layer will go into rock layer, and our height into rock height. Yeah, there's a bunch of errors because we have nothing actually set up here. Don't worry about those errors. We're going to take care of it right now. All right, so with that set up, we're just going to move that down here. And we're going to select this node, and this will be our preview node. Start previewing node. There we go. All right. I realize nothing is showing up. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make our lives a little bit easier. We're going to hit Window. I'm going to go to Content Browser 2. It opens up this new content browser. I'm going to go to my Textures folder, go to my Ground folder, go to Rock, and I'm going to select all these materials, and I'm just going to drag them onto the map. Now, I need them twice, but instead of dragging them on a second time, it's going to actually make my work a little bit harder. I'm just going to start moving these around. And I'm going to start up here, and this is very, very, very important. If as you get further in, the landscape stops working, you just see blackness or the checkerboard pattern after we get everything else working, then this is the step that you've messed up somewhere or you've missed out. This is very, very, very important. I don't want to see, oh, I'm seeing a checkerboard pattern. I'm telling you now why that's happening. It's happening because you're limited to the number of textures that you can take samples from. And I can't quite remember the limit. I really should look that up. But there's a way around that. We change our sampler source, and we do it from a shared wrap instead. All of our materials from this point forward must come from a shared wrap. In fact, we probably want to go back and redo our landscape with that. All right, now our rock layer, I'm closing this out by the way now, is going to be a bit different than every other layer we're working with. Our rock layer, because it is a primary layer we are going to, in a way to combat tiling and to make things a bit nicer, neater, and cooler looking, and just generally more optimized, is we're going to lerp between two different tilings. Now, you can repeat this for all the other materials if you want. I am only going to do this for the rock. Again, it is perfectly fine if you deviate and repeat what I'm doing here for the other materials. In fact, actually, you can go ahead and do that after this video if you want to get ahead of where we're at. But I'm going to approach the other materials in a slightly different fashion. Why am I saying all of this? Well, like I said earlier, I'm going to need all these nodes twice. So I'm going to duplicate them over here. So I need 2 copies of each node for us to lerp between. So I'm going to take those diffuse nodes, and I'm going to start with them. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to lerp between these 2 diffuse nodes. But they're exactly the same, you're saying. But we're going to tile them differently. So I'm going to take a lerp and a linear interpolate. I'm going to open this up because I know I want to take a look at this later on. I'm going to plug that into there. All right. We're going to have, I'm going to put a bit of space between these nodes real quick. We're going to come from this lerp into here. Now in reality, we are going to have one more thing that happens between our lerp and plugging into there. And it's actually going to be another way we're going to address the tiling issue. We're going to have a randomizer in our texture here. But now you can see our texture is on our orb here. And what we're going to do now is work on lerping between the 2. So we are going to first set up our base tiling. The way we're going to do that is we're going to take this UV texture coordinate here, and we are going to multiply. All right, we are going to multiply by a scalar parameter. So I'm just going to click this B, right click it, promote to parameter, and this will be our rock. You do, trust me, you do want to put the material that you're working with in the name, tiling. And the reason for that is all the parameters are going to show up in the instance. So rock tiling, grass tiling, etc. tiling will show up in there. To make life easier again, I'm going to put this into a category called rock, and I'm going to default my tiling to 0.001 for now. And I'm going to come straight off this multiply directly into this UV here. Now before I go forward, I am going to put a preview on, and what I'm going to do is get my world position. This is absolute world position. This has no meaning, by the way, when I plug this in. I'm going to multiply. I'm going to plug that into there, and I'm going to do a scalar parameter with a default value of 1. And I'm going to plug that into there. Again, this is just to preview what's happening. I'm a bit annoyed I can't line those up nicely. So let me just fix that real quick. All right, as for our UVs for our second set here, what we're going to do is we're going to put a reroute here. Probably should have done the lineup after that. And we're going to do a multiply node. And we're going to plug the multiply UV into there. I didn't mean to open that up. We're going to right click B there, promote to parameter. And this is rock far tiling. And we're going to name this 1, or put this in the category of rock. We'll default the value out to 1. And we're going to just line that up under there and clean that up a tiny bit. And I'm going to do the same for the stuff up here. just to reline that up. All right, so that, you'll notice there's a bit of a difference in our tiling. It's very subtle, but I mean, really it's the same. I'm screwing with you, it's the same. We're multiplying by 1. Let's do 1.1, and you can see a bit of a difference, but for now, with the default value of 1, there is no difference. What we need to do next is create a system for our depth fade between these two points on our lerp. The way we're going to do that is we are going to create a material function called camera distance tiling. So we're going to go back to our ground, and we're only going to use this here. So I'm going to create a folder called misc for miscellaneous functions. And I normally keep the tessellation one in here, but I've decided not to since we're using it in our water this time around. And I'll do another MF, and this is camera distance tiling. Pop this open, and this one is fairly simple. We're going to take the pixel depth, and there we go, we have our pixel depth. So if you want to know more about that, it outputs the depth or distance from the camera of the pixel currently being rendered. Really simple stuff, right? And we're going to subtract from this a parameter offset. So let's do a function input, and this offset will be of a scalar type. And like I said, I'm calling it offset. I meant to say function input will be of a scalar type. And like I said earlier, we're going to use fade offset and fade length outside of tessellation. So we're using it here, tile fade offset. And that we will default out to 180. And we're just going to plug that into there. And then we're going to do a divide. This should look familiar from the tessellation slightly. And we're going to do another function input. And this will be our tile fade length. And our tile fade length will also be of type scalar. And we are going to leave it at 0. We're dividing by 0. Oh my god, the world's going to come to an end. All right, and then we're going to clamp this value because we need it between 0 and 1 because we're lerping between 0% and 100% of our different materials or textures. We're going to plug that into there, compile, apply, save, whatever. And then back in here, we're going to do a material function call. Again, if it doesn't automatically show up, look for it in this drop down here. All right, sorry if you can hear whatever repair work my neighbor is doing to their place. We're going to pull off of this, and we're going to go right into our lerp alpha there. So that is how we're controlling what we're seeing. In fact, I'm going to put a second reroute in, so I'm not sure why I'm so worried about that right now. I'm going to just do that. And then I am going to create 2 parameters. And the first one will be my rock tile fade length, which I am going to default to a value of 0.003. And again, going to put it in the category of rock. And then I'm going to do the same for my offset here. It's going to be rock tile fade offset. And I'm going to give a default value of 180. Okay. And we're going to save real quick. And so now we have our offsets set up. And everything else from this point really becomes repeating outside of a few little bits. So we're actually going to break this preview. I just wanted you to see what it looked like for a moment. And we're going to move this way because we do have some other stuff to do. We have 2 nodes between preview and our lerp here. We have a multiply, which we won't do right now. That'll be in a few videos. And then we have make material attributes. And we plug that into there. And there we go. We get our preview back. It's all nice, pretty, lovely, whatever, and stuff. All right. Now we're going to tackle our specular. So we're going to right-click specular, promote to variable, and this will be rock specular. Because again, everything else is going to have that too. Put in the category rock, and I'll show you a trick at the end of this video to check where it's at. Our min, or our default will be 0.25, and we should just set the min and max to 0 and 1. Roughness. This one is going to be a bit different because we have some textures we can use for that. We have a roughness texture, which I believe is that one. No, that's our AO. That's our roughness. and that's our roughness. So let's grab our roughness textures, bring them down here, and we're going to repeat what we've done up here. Except for we don't have to do all the math again. We can just literally, we're going to line these up to that grid line. Plug those into there, take a duplicate on that node, give ourselves a bit of space, plug that into the alpha, or into the A. Sorry, I lied to you. Plug the red into the A. And the red is because we do not have this set up as a color. We're just using masks. So we're going to use the red channel. We are going to lerp again. This is the part that's a bit different. And this is our alpha in this case. And we're going to lerp between a min and max. So remember, A is our min, B is our max. So I'm going to right-click A, and this will be our rough min, which I will leave at 0. And I will not set a min or max. And then our B will be our rough max. And I'm going to set this to 1 as our default. I'm going to go back and put both of these in our rock category if it will let me. And there we go. And this will go into our roughness setting up here. All right, so we're lerping between a value of 0 and 1 based on where we're at in this image. Now, how are we going to set our UVs for this? Well, we're just going to come off of these things. And we're going to repeat this process over and over again. So we're going to come from our rock tiling and go into our first one. That's our near, because that's an A. And put a reroute in, because we're going to use this reroute to make our lives a little bit easier down the road. Off of here, we're going to put another reroute in. Line those up a bit better. Unselect that node, line that up. And we're going to take from that one, from the far tiling multiply, and go into our UV down here. Again, we're going to put another reroute in, mostly to make the lives a little bit easier. Wow, that was way too far down. Line those up. And then for our alpha, well, hey, we have this reroute here I put in with our distance tiling. That goes into that alpha there. And our third reroute. You know, if you want to be really, neat about this, you can put another reroute in to just line that up a bit better and come under here, but I'm not so concerned about that. All right. After that, we have our normals to take care of. And the normal maps should stand out. They're two blue ones. They're the only ones with color, really. Right? Drop that there. Drop that there. All right. So we're just going to repeat the same process, except for we are just lerping between these two. And we're going to lerp using the RGB channel in this case. So lerp. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Lerp linear interpolate. And I like having my lerps open. And we're going to plug that into there. And we're going to go straight into our normal here. Don't worry about this stuff. We'll take care of that in a moment. And again, we're going to take from that first pin there, go into our UV for the top one. Put a reroute in, because we're going to just use the reroutes as our daisy chain approach. Take from the second one, go into our second normal. Again, put a reroute in to help set up our daisy chain approach of this all. And then again, from our tile fade offset into our alpha there. And finally, our last reroute for this set. All right. Just going to line those up a bit better. And move that up a bit closer. Next, we are going to do our ambient occlusion. Feel free to skip this step if you want to skip your ambient occlusion. We don't really need it. It doesn't do much. So there is our AOs. We're going to take those and move them down here. And we're going to repeat the process yet again. There is no difference on this one from our normals. We're literally lerping from one to the other. Again, I like having my little lerp thingies open. I'm not sure what they show me in the AO ones, but Again, however, actually you can do this from the RGB. I'm not getting an error on it on my other one. Cool. We're going to go straight from that lerp into our ambient occlusion. And we'll repeat this process of finding the uppermost one here, coming into our uppermost there, plugging in a little lovely reroute, And doing the same for our lower one. Again, plugging in a lovely little reroute. This one I will line up right away. And then coming from our alpha lerp into our new alpha lerp. And again, yet another reroute. Now I'm going to select these nodes, line those up. All right, now comes the bit that's a little bit different. And we're going to take our output and move it down here for our height. And we're going to take our last two, our displacement nodes here, and we're going to move them to the bottom of our little queue of textures. I'm a little bit bothered. Those aren't lined up correctly anymore. I guess that's as close as I'm going to get them to line up, I think. There we go. Okay, whatever. It's good enough for government work. I don't care how close to the grid line they are. All right. So the way this is going to work, we're going to take one of these now. We're just going to ignore this one for a moment. And we're going to take this displacement, this top one here, and we're going to go from our RGB channel directly into this output here. So let's just plug that RGB into that output. There we go. And we're going to set our displacement. We're going to come only off of our near tessellation, sorry, not near tessellation, our near tile thingamajigger. So if we go to this top one here, take from there, go into there, and we can put one final reroute in, and we can just line that back up and raise that up here a bit. All right, so we now have that taken care of. We do have one more displacement texture to worry about, but we'll be doing that with our tessellation in a few videos. So we'll do tessellation all in one go. For all our layers. Let's go ahead and apply and save this. Let's go to our landscape and just save it here as well. Make sure there are no errors anymore. We don't have any errors. We do have a crap ton of instructions clearly though. And we're not seeing anything, right? You also might get a black ball instead or a texture grid ball thingy. The reason for that is our layer blend is set to display this top layer first, even though it says preview weight is 0. If we set our preview weight on here to 1 and give it a moment to compile the shaders, we have our rock. We aren't going to set up our actual values in this video, mostly because this video is probably already over 30 minutes. But what we are going to do is create a material instance, and we'll just leave the name as is. We'll go to our landscape. We'll go to paint. We will actually, I lied, we'll select our landscape first. We will take our material instance and put it in the landscape material. We will then go to our landscape paint mode, and we will very quickly select our blank layer. And we're going to create a non-weight blended normal that we will store in our materials ground, and we're just going to leave it in the ground, and this will be our blank layer info. Let it make that thing for a moment. It'll take a couple of seconds. There it is. And then we're going to do one for our ground, and this one actually was not supposed to be, it's supposed to be a non-weight blend layer. So let me just fix that real quick. This is no weight blend, so if you click the wrong thing, come back in here and select that as true. For the other layers, the reverse of that's true. We want to make ones that are weight blend normal. If you get it wrong, you can go in and set it to false, so that it is weight blend normal. We're going to set this in materials, ground, and rock. All right, I'm going to right select my rock here, and I'm going to fill layer. It's going to take a moment. I'm going to pause the recording while it does that. Oh, or yeah, no, it's still doing it. Actually, I was about to pause the recording and instead it's still doing it, and it finished. So there is our rock material on our surface. It's a bit too specular, it's a little too wet looking, plasticky. That's why we have that lighting. You can see the displacement's already kind of working, which is nice to see. But we will expand this out a bit more in the next video. Really quickly on tessellation, yes, ground already does tessellate. We are going to control that tessellation already. You can see if you get rid of the sky sphere that this is already tessellated actually. That's why it has so many quads to it. But we will be tessellating it further. All right. That said, that takes us through our first layer for our setup. And, you know, here we are in our world. Of course, I'm not in our character, so we can't see much. But hey, we have our first material layer done. And this video has been brought to you by my Patreon sponsors like Rian, Connor, sorry about that, Connor, 1 Volt 10, Galwa, Quad Menson, and Hanas. I look forward I'm getting ahead of myself. If you've enjoyed setting up your material, if you're looking forward to working on your landscape a bit more, make sure to hit that like button. If you want to be here when we do the other layers and you aren't going off on your own and just replicating what I did for the rock layer, then make sure to hit the subscribe and notify icon. Consider becoming a Patreon sponsor to help support this channel and or to get a copy of this project file. All of that said, I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.